Hello again, YouTube. This is DJ Vendetta. So in this episode, we're going to go over power options. And what I mean by that is, how are you going to power your devices and anything else that runs off electricity in your van? Well, you pretty much have three different options. And those options consist of running everything off your starter battery via inverter or running 12-volt devices. Your second option is going to be a generator. And your third option is solar. So, to go over the first option, pros and cons. Well, your vehicle's already going to have a starter battery. Then all you're going to need is an inverter. You can get those relatively cheap depending on how much, how many watts that you need. You can get ones that are, 100 watts all the way up to kilowatts, 5 kilowatts, 6 kilowatts. Probably not going to be able to run that high of an inverter off of one battery, but these are your options. So, again, pros to running off your starter battery with an inverter. It's cheap. You already have the starter battery. You already have a way to charge it by running the vehicle. When you're driving around, if you drive around a lot, then you may not need anything more than this. If you don't have any high wattage devices, you may not need anything more than this. You probably will want to upgrade to at least one AGM battery and make sure you're running a decent inverter, especially if you're going to be running laptops or a desktop or other sensitive electronic devices. You probably want to go and get a pure sine wave inverter. But it's relatively cheap to do this. Okay. So your second option would be running a generator. Now, if you're building your own van, most likely you don't have a generator on board from the factory. If you have a Class B or any other RV, then you have a good chance of having an onboard generator. They can be relatively cheap to rather expensive. So there's really no pro or con there. But with generators, one of the major cons is if you're trying to be stealth, they have a tendency to be rather loud. And you're not going to be able to put it on the inside of your van. So you're going to have to strap it to the bumper or figure out some other way to strap it to the vehicle. And that's not going to help with being stealth because not many people have generators strapped to their vehicles. Now, if you're going to be boondocking out in the middle of nowhere on a regular basis, then having a generator may not be a bad idea. You can get some rather fuel-efficient ones. Ryobi makes a decent one. A little expensive, but they definitely make a decent one. Which isn't too loud, but nonetheless, it still makes noise. Cost, again, that's relative. And also the cheaper ones, I wouldn't advise running sensitive electronics off of them. You want to get one with a proper inverter. So, yeah, and also on some of those, you can actually charge your starter battery off of that generator. But again, you're not going to be stealth by running a generator. So your third option, solar. Well, it can get expensive. That's definitely a con. Especially if you're going to go with an MPPT, solar controller. You're still going to need an inverter of some kind, so you're probably going to want to go with the pure sine wave inverter, and then you got to pay for the panels, and then depending on your mechanical and electrical know-how, you may have to pay somebody else to install it for you. So it can get rather expensive rather quickly running on solar. However, it's going to be the most stealth option that you're going to be able to, use for power. And it's going to be a reliable option. And after you pay for it, there's not much else that's going to cost you. You're not going to have to be paying for fuel to run it like you would with a generator or your vehicle. You're not going to be polluting the earth by running your vehicle more than you have to. And it's generally just nicer to have. Because while you're relaxing in your van, do you really want to sit there and have it run? Put hours on the engine or put hours on a generator and hear all that noise. This life is about lower stress. And having that noise is going to be a stressor. So do you really want that? I know I sure wouldn't. So in my opinion, solar is the best way to go if you can afford it. There are cheaper ways to go about it, and depending on what kind of electronics that you're going to be powering by it, it may not be as expensive. I'm about to install a solar system on the ambulance here very shortly. That's going to consist of a 200 watt solar panel, a basic charge controller. Mainly the reason for that is cost. The cost is a little too high running, the MPPT charge controller. And with the batteries that I'm going to have, I've already purchased one Optima Yellow Top. And that's one of my starting batteries. My ambulance has 2 starting batteries. And next week I'm going to be replacing the second starter battery with another Optima Yellow Top. And I'm going to have the system wired right into that, those 2 batteries. I may go with an additional battery beyond that depending on my power needs, but I'm not sure if I'm necessarily going to need to go that route. Because anything that I'm going to be running that's high wattage, I'm most likely going to be running my engine along with gathering the solar. Just because the devices that I'm going to be running are going to exceed what that solar panel is going to be able to input, such as a rice cooker or some kind of electric stovetop. So it would be a good idea for me not to waste too much money on having too many batteries when I can just run the engine for 10-20 minutes and then shut it back down and then just let the solar do its job with keeping the batteries topped off. So most likely I'm just going to go with just having the 2 Optima Yellow Tops, which are AGM batteries. And I've already noticed a big difference in starting this thing with having just even one AGM. So if you're having any issues with not having enough power to start, you might want to upgrade to an AGM or a lithium if you could really afford it. I'd love to have 2 lithium batteries up front, but I digress. That's that's out of my price range at this point. So yeah. So in conclusion, in my opinion, solar is the best way to go, but you may not need as much as you think, and it's always going to be a more stealth option to go with solar than anything else. And for running cost, it's virtually zero. Alright, YouTube, let me take a vape. See you on the next episode.